if Canada's letting in 500,000 to almost a million because some of them are temporary foreign workers, and then if there's so many coming in and they're competing for a limited number of either jobs or homes or resources, and they're not able to individually thrive, then that means we've exceeded the level of immigration that is beneficial to those individuals, because now they're struggling. Of course, they want to come to Canada. They're told they have this amazing opportunity, so they're sold this idea, but I don't know if the reality lines up. And then if they're dependent on help from government, like subsidies for any number of these programs, well, that's not government funded, that's taxpayer funded.
That's right.
So they're not generating those taxes to pay for those. It's Canadians who have lived here for how many years, who are putting in these long hours, who are still just struggling to make ends meet by themselves.
Yeah, I think I saw the statistic. I think it was there's probably a broader one, but I saw one specifically about Syrian refugees, because I don't know how long ago that was, 6 or 7 years ago, maybe, when there was a really big influx of Syrian immigrants. And I think the statistic was in the 5 or 7 years, however much it was since the majority of Syrian immigrants arrived in Canada, only 10% or something are earning over the poverty line. And the poverty line, I believe now, is like $27,000. So that's 90% of your new Canadians not paying any taxes. This sounds harsher than I mean it, but literally being a burden, being like a tax burden on Canadians, like you say. And it's, like there's how many, it feels like you see a new article weekly now about people who from different parts of the world. Like I remember seeing one about Indian immigrants who are leaving because there's nothing of what they were promised is true. This is not, you cannot come here and immediately have a higher quality of life. And it's not something that is able to be actually fulfilled anymore. This shifts party allegiance, kind of by the generation. So when I say this is not something that like liberals do per se, but this is something that liberals are doing now. They are importing a voter base, is what it feels like. And they did it in the 60s and the 50s before that. It has switched parties over the years. At certain points in history, conservatives have done it. In the U.S., a lot of people, I don't know why people don't talk about this more, and I'm not sure exactly where I heard this, but in the U.S., California had voted Republican in 8 of the past 10 federal elections prior to Ronald Reagan. Now, Ronald Reagan, he was supposedly a proponent of allowing Mexican migration into California, California becoming somewhat of a sanctuary state for Mexicans. That almost in and of itself has flipped California to being almost exclusively Democrat. And when I say that they were voted Republican 8 of 10 prior elections, that even included areas like LA. So they were staunch. California was a red state. And when a Republican wanted to use, what the impression was, a Republican wanted to use immigrants as a voting bloc, well, then people started voting against that. So it's not just a liberal thing, but it's a politics thing. People in politics do it all the time. It's not racist to say that you're using immigrants as a voting base. It's just an observation of what a struggling political party has determined its only course of action to win another election is.
It makes sense that within whatever the 5 years it is to become a citizen, that politically speaking that's not a long time. So an influx of people at the point that they're voting, and if they're still struggling those 5 years later, they're not going to vote for a party that would decrease their benefits. And if they're sold an idea that only those on the left will provide for you and give you what you need, then that makes sense why
it's in their own interest, of course.
Yeah.
Even if they may not necessarily, I've talked about this on the podcast before, even if it's not necessarily in their own personal interests, as most of these people come from areas of the world that are not particularly liberal and don't lead particularly liberal day-to-day lives, but they will vote that way if that's in their own best interest, of course. Of course they will.